Representation matters. Racial justice matters. Black lives matter. Black queer lives matter. In 2016, ACPA leaders made the decision to move beyond rhetoric and center racial justice and decolonization practices throughout the association. When contemplating people to envision what a strategic imperative for racial justice and decolonization looks like in practice, I immediately thought of your next ACPA president, Dr. Domingue. Representation matters. If you do not see people who look like you in positions of influence, you might inadvertently believe you cannot aspire to those roles. Dre loves using the language of possibility models. She saw a possibility model in Donna Lee when Donna was ACPA president. What Dre sometimes does not see, however, are the many people who see her as a possibility model, myself included. Somewhere, someone who will listen to her presidential address will believe that they too can someday be ACPA president, because representation or possibility matters. In the same way that representation matters, so too does racial justice matter. Dre does not simply see racial justice as a checkbox, as something to be ticked off a piece of paper that one has done. For Dre, racial justice means showing up every day, making the small changes in your spheres of influence that advance racial justice. It means attending meetings where she is the only person who holds her identities in the room and saying what needs to be said. It means leading the ACPA commissions and having hard conversations about race and racism. It means showing up boldly and speaking truth to power as a member of the governing board. Now, I don't value leaders who shrink in the face of racial truth-telling. I value Dre because she courageously and consistently lives what racial justice means, working every day in the trenches with little to no recognition, centering race because it matters. And doing so even when no one else in the room is supportive. Dre does not center racial justice because it was the latest trend of 2020. She centers racial justice because, for example, Black Lives Matter. And more specifically, Black queer lives matter. As Dre wholeheartedly believes and embodies, Black lives do not matter unless we include the complexities and nuances of Black lives. Dre pushes us to think complexly about Blackness, to see Black people in all our fullness, nuances, contradictions, possibilities, and richness. Dre, thank you for gifting us with your presence as ACPA president. Thank you for living your life at the intersections of so many complexities. Thank you for pushing us to think about racial justice and Black lives more complexly. Thank you for courageously speaking truth to power even when your voice shakes. Thank you for being a possibility model for me and so many others in this room and not in this room. Thank you for the leadership you provide at Davidson and the places you've been before. And thank you for the labor you have given as ACP Vice President and that you will now give as President. I stepped away from ACPA after ending my term as past president to rest, and you have reinvigorated me and given me reason to come back. I promise to work alongside you to enact your vision as ACPA president. Now, because Dre is who she is and likes to shake things up, there are a few others who want to share some words in introducing the next ACPA president, Dre Domingue.
It's time for Dre CPA.
It's
for Dre CPA.
It's time for Dre CPA.
Dre is the leader we need because she's committed to serving our association by focusing on building relationships through a shared vision and a responsibility to helping create a more racially just and decolonizing future for higher education. Dre has been leading quietly, often in the background, while giving support and offering encouragement for others' contributions in the association to ensure that we all achieve success. But make no mistake, she is a force to be reckoned with. She didn't seek out leadership, but rather has grown into the leader she is today because others have recognized and looked to her for leadership. Dre has taken on this role in a challenging time, and I believe she will be a president who helps our association be better tomorrow than we are today.
Dre is the leader that we need because she is purely the embodiment of scholar practitioner. What she has given to this field and the association by her words, her thought, her labor, this role was truly overdue. At this unique point of 5 years after the initial strategic imperative with the great resignation, as some say, but it's really the great reevaluation of what we do and how we do it in the midst of all the changes that are happening in our world. Dre is the one to lead us into the 99th year for a clear vision, space to reflect, and reinvent what student affairs can be into the future.
Dre is the leader we need because she is real and authentic, and she brings people with her. It's easy to go to a conference and sit in the back and not be noticed. With Dre, she authentically brings people into the conversation even when it's hard. I honestly believe that because of Dre, so many more folks have concluded that ACPA is their professional home. People need their sense of belonging in ACPA, and they need folks to be real with. That's Dre. I first knew Dre as a fellow commission chair, and it was natural that many of us said, Dre, we need you to be coordinator of commissions. And then we said, Dre, we need you to be ACPA president. Here we are, fortunate to have this amazing leader who is not only bold, but also vulnerable and raw. Dre is the leader we need because she knows folks in student affairs are going through a lot, and she's not afraid to shine the light on that. Dre has been a critical voice in the formation of the strategic imperative, and she's been a bold leader when it comes to bringing others in and challenging us to center racial justice and decolonization. Besides her impressive career, Dre also happens to be a great friend to so many. Some of the most impactful moments at conventions have been sharing a meal, usually barbecue, with Dre and having meaningful conversations. It says something about her as a human when I witness so many trying to schedule time with her. Dre is the leader we need and the leader we've been waiting for. I think I speak for many when I say we're grateful to have her as a friend, a mentor, and a leader.
And now,
It's our privilege
to introduce our next ACPA president.
our next ACPA president,
our next ACPA president.
All right. So everyone, get your Dre CPA pins ready. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce you to ACPA's president for 2022-2023, Dr. Andrea D. or Dre Domingue.
Lots of feelings. Y'all know I don't do feelings. I'm an introvert, and as I've been telling folks, this is my learning edge today. So I hope y'all have some grace for me. Also, because y'all made me cry a lot in the last 5 minutes, so there's that. Sorry, off script. So honored to have been a part of the trio with Vernon Wall and the Danielle Morgan Acosta. We have been on the governing board twice together, so I couldn't have thought of a better president to be a VP for. So I am So glad I get to follow behind you in this journey. Chris Moody, you are the best pep talker ever. I have been freaking out all week long, and he's like, Dre, he knew how to calm me down, so thank y'all for that. And thank you to Stephen and Symphony and Joe and Nicole for taking time to say nice things about me to everybody. So thanks. Sorry, I'm gonna try to get my stuff together. I almost said something bad. Stuff together. Whether you're meeting me for the first time or have known me for years, I'd like to offer a brief introduction of who I am. My name is Dr. Andrea D. D stands for Don. Domingue, so pronounced Domingue, not Domingue. Most folks call me Dre. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the only child of the late Lois and Claude Domingue, a high school biology teacher and an Army First Sergeant who modeled how to advocate for myself and show up for others. A Southerner, but specifically a Texan, that's really important to me. Currently living on the lands of the Catawba and the Shukri, just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Trying to live my best life as a Black queer woman in the world that continually sends me messages otherwise. I'm a scholar practitioner who has spent the last 19 years as a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator. I mostly held positions within identity-based centers, fostering community and belonging in partnership with students. Lately, my work is what I affectionately call #DeanLife at Davidson, where it's just a combination of responding to emergent student needs and addressing systemic inequities on campus. I also find passion as a scholar. My writing is a space to resist and heal from the ongoing harm within and beyond higher education. It's also a space to dream of new possibilities for campuses. I also see possibility in my teaching, and specifically with working with graduate students. For the last 3 summers, I have taught my dream course, an intersection of critical pedagogy and college student development theory to better prepare emerging practitioners for current student needs. Lastly, and perhaps because I've been in student affairs a really long time, it might be fun to know that I am ISTJ in Myers-Briggs, so extrapolate if you will. My strength quest types are achiever, input, learner, competition, context. And if you do true colors, my type is gold, so that should make sense. All of that. All that to say is I'm a deeply reflective and curious person who is pretty good at moving things forward. I'm doing my best to be authentic and transparent as I share what's been on my mind lately in higher education. I'm gonna attempt to ground you in some context. And lastly, I want to share how I hope as an association during my hopes for the association during my time as president. One of the top questions I got the last few months and a lot through convention is, am I excited to be ACPA president? In full honesty, I struggle to answer that question. Usually I tell folks I have been so focused on logistical transition, the committees, convention meeting schedule, onboarding, et cetera, that I haven't had much time to consider the emotional transition. Can I have my water, Danielle? I am dehydrated, I apologize. Lots of crying. Excuse me. See, I'm really, really good at compartmentalizing my feelings, not today. All these years of navigating the strong Black woman archetype, self-sacrificing myself for the good of others to near depletion, with little time and energy to focus on me. Or maybe it's the way I've been socialized in the field of student affairs. Those early messages told me to put my students' needs first, that long hours and always being busy was the equivalent of good work and dedication, maybe even help me advance in the field. And while all these are certainly contributing factors to why answering the question if I'm excited is so difficult, the real answer is I can't quite get behind the word excited. One of the feelings I'm hold overall is that I'm weary, specifically about the state of higher education. Now, let me be clear, I'm trying to attempt to separate my love for ACPA and the climate of higher education on campuses right now. I recognize that might be difficult to do given that I and many of you are holding dual memberships in these spaces, but let me start with how I'm feeling about higher education. Higher education is in crisis. And to be fair, it has been for decades. The dynamics of COVID-19, along with ongoing violence towards people of color, divisive politics, climate change, just to name a few, have exacerbated existing challenges for students, faculty, and staff, particularly those who navigate historically and systemically marginalized identities. Lately, my inbox, social media feeds, text messages are filled with buzz phrases, the Great Resignation, burnout, and a return to normalcy. So often discussions of these phenomena are missing key points. The other side of the Great Resignation is the Great Recruitment. We don't talk enough about the physical and emotional toll on people who are now tasked with filling open positions. And for those who are now covering an increased workload, managing shifts in staffing while operating our residence halls, responding to Title IX incidents, supporting students through mental health crisis, and teaching classes. I'm particularly thinking about folks like me at the mid-level who often do not make budgetary decisions on salary and benefits, yet we're the ones who have to navigate the disconnect between what a candidate hopes for and what the reality of what an institution offers. The other side of burnout is healing and recovery. I've seen some conversations that are naming systemic issues within higher education. I also see urges for folks to take time off and do self-care strategies. In my personal opinion, as someone who's navigated burnout twice in the last 6 months, these are Band-Aid solutions to critical wounds. This displaces the burden of responsibility to individuals and micro levels rather than addressing systemic and institutional dynamics that contribute and sustain burnout. Is it possible to heal and recover? Lastly, a return to normalcy and the idea of reopening campuses and resuming operations. I have to admit, every time I hear folks comment about a return to pre-COVID times with nostalgia, I can't help but ask myself the question, normal for who? Did we ever really close? Are we sure we want to go back to the way things were? And how can we reimagine our processes? While I'm worried about higher education generally, I am more than ever in deep commitment with ACPA, all of our members and our leaders. I believe fully that ACPA is uniquely aligned as an association to address tough social political issues we're collectively navigating while boldly transforming higher education through scholarship, practice, and advocacy. I've been a member for ACPA for 18 years, however, it became my professional home 13 years ago. I was drawn to ACPA through its entity group, specifically the Commission for Social Justice Education. This group offered me a rare opportunity for me to show up as my full self, an unapologetic, outspoken, queer Black woman who strived to be a critical scholar and practitioner. Through our work on publications, webinars, and institutes, I shaped a personal and professional toolkit on how to lead on and off college campuses. I'm also drawn to lead within ACPA due to the shared values of equity and inclusion. A pivotal moment for me, and the reason I asked Dr. Stephen Quay, Joe Cooper, Symphony Oxidine, and Nicole Johnson to speak was due to our shared experience in 2016. This is a summer where days before the ACPA July leadership meeting, the murders of Alton Sterling and Philando Castro consumed the news cycle. Through past President Donna Lee's leadership, we engaged as a group on racial justice, and our discussion was a precursor to the governing board's announcement of the strategic imperative for racial justice. At the time, I was serving as commission chair for social justice education, attending my third commission chair meeting, and historically a predominantly white space. Unable to carry on with our agenda as usual, I, along with colleagues Nicole Johnson, Joe Cooper, Tricia Smith, and Gwen Shimmick, and many others decided to have our first of several authentic conversations about racial justice and what actions we could take as entity leaders. It's also the time I was asked to lead and was elected by my colleagues to serve on the governing board as Assembly Coordinator of Commissions. A year later, we expanded the imperative after some calling in, lots of calling in, from folks such as Dr. Symphony Oxendine and Corey Bazemore James to include decolonization. Past President Stephen Quay asked me to co-chair the Strategic Imperative for Racial Justice Curriculum Task Force, and later joined a collective of writers to draft the association's guiding document. I want to pause for a second to explicitly name how bold we were as an association. I want to remind folks that when the imperative was first announced, it was not widely welcomed, and both within and beyond our association. We were described as divisive, prioritizing race and decolonization above everything else. We lost some members, and some of our leaders were personally attacked. We also gained some members and noted new energy from folks to lead dialogue and research on strategic imperative for racial justice and decolonization. Now, as I watch other associations on campus strive towards racial justice and decolonization, I can't help but feel proud we continue to lead higher education on equity issues. I want to now return to the opening question, am I excited to be your next ACPA president? And perhaps the most authentic answer I can offer is that I'm ready to be your president. I entertained the thought, you can clap if you want to, that's fine. That's fine, I'll take a clap. I entertained the thought of running for ACPA president as a long-term goal back in 2018. Like some folks in our fields, I received early messages that association leadership was reserved for older white men and women who held senior ranking positions in our field. I'll leave that there. This is a master narrative I carry with me despite witnessing 4 Black ACPA presidents during my term as Assembly Coordinator of Commissions. I convinced myself I needed at least 10 more years of experience in higher education, another governing board position, a senior campus position before submitting my vice president application. Sorry. I'm also deeply aware of what happens when a Black woman moves into visible leadership roles that are typically historically held for white folks. I was not sure if I wanted to take on the macro and the microaggressions, and quite honestly, I still have some healing to do from past harms within the association. After deep reflection, clearly I moved things up a little bit, 8 years, for 2 reasons. First, my beloved ACPA community, with my possibility models, Donna Lee and Stephen Quay, they helped me to realize my tenure plan was actually internalized oppression, mixed with imposter syndrome and a fear of failure. I did not need to get ready. I already had the vision and skills to be president. I was a leader and we have been waiting for. Once I believed this myself, I sat down and authentically wrote my application. Second, I believe it was the right time for me to lead. Thanks to great advice from Dr. Leilani Coupeau, I took an intentional break from ACPA leadership at the conclusion of my governing board term. It was important to me not only to rest and make room for new leadership, but also to consider how I would return to leadership should that be in my journey. Days after returning to campus from convention in Nashville, like many of you, I pivoted to remote work and shelter in place due to COVID-19. A few months later, I sat at home alone as I watched the events following the killing of George Floyd and heightened media attention to racialized violence. While quarantine allowed me the time and the privilege to physically rest from decades of chronic busyness on campus, I also experienced a mixture of racial battle fatigue, isolation, and stress. What helped me to recover and brought me new energy during this difficult time was ACPA. From webinars to resource sharing to dialogue spaces, I was appreciative of how our leaders and members rapidly stepped up to support our members and begin to envision our collective campus work. Just as we boldly transformed higher education through our work with the imperative, ACPA continued to set the pace for educators in campus. That effort is something I wanted to be a part of again. So when I got multiple nudges to consider running for ACPA vice president, I felt ready to step into the role. I am truly grateful and humbled to lead in this association during these critical times, and I'm excited to be in partnership with all of you. As you all know, we tend to be a little bit booked and busy as an association, so I wanted to conclude by sharing what I hoped about our coming year. In collaboration with our governing board, NT leaders, ACPA Foundation, International Office, and partnerships with other associations, here are a few association strategic priorities for the 2022-2023 year. And they're there, yep, cool. First one being our strategic plan, phase 2, and universal design accessibility implementation. If you didn't go to our session on that day, yesterday, we are gonna continue that effort, building upon the groundwork of Danielle Morgan Acosta to move us forward in a variety of efforts. The second thing I'm really excited about is gonna be ACPA at 100 celebration. We are really had an amazing meeting recently yesterday. We really wanna reimagine what our 100 years are gonna be. We, as Danielle alluded to, we've already reimagined our leadership structure, and we really are looking to be innovative in how we honor our history and our future forward. We currently are working on decolonization and our ACPA governance transformation. We began that process through Donna Lee's leadership, and we're continuing that effort, and so we're hoping that by the time you see me again, we'll have an update on what that new structure will look like. Presidential Task Force for Campus Expectations for Navigating COVID-19. We need help on our campuses to figure that out in this new environment that we're in. I'll be launching a higher education employment in the 21st century project, so feel free to find me about that one. And we're going to continue our leadership in research and scholarship. There's some really exciting things that we're looking to roll out through some leadership, through different ways of scholarship that are non-traditional and decolonizing. We're going to be advancing our imperative through skill building and action. If you were here earlier from Mark Lowe and talking about Convention 23 and recognizing the work we've done with our caucusing, we're looking to move beyond that to really have tangible change on our campuses and the field at large. We'll continue to support our entity groups and the amazing work that they do on all the levels to make sure our members are supported and we're amplifying all the work that they're doing. And we're looking forward to Convention 2023 in New Orleans. Fun fact, we have not been there since 1986, so many of us have not been there in our current professional lifetimes. So I'm looking forward to going back there, having some new energy there. So here's my ask. I need all of you to know that our association leaders, members, and staff are working really hard despite all of their navigating during these ongoing pandemics to support you. I want to provide you with the best resources, professional development, opportunities, and experiences without losing sight of who we are. And while we are dedicated, we can't do this work alone. We need y'all. We really need y'all. We need your ideas. We need your feedback. We need your participation at our events. We need you to invite new folks to join us into the association. We need you to help us continually boldly transform higher education. Thank you. Awkward. That felt weird. I'm trying. Thank y'all. Fun fact, this is off script. I'm a facilitator by nature, and so I really don't speak. And so I had been teasing people that I was going to have y'all do various activities to facilitate conversation. So I appreciate your grace as I'm learning my learning edges of speeches. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, let's go to lunch. So, this concludes our annual business meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our annual business meeting and presidential transition for 2022. Ooh, that was Shauna. Okay, we got that. Who's our second? Oh, that was Jason Cottrell. Sorry, Heather. Jason Cottrell will take it. Cool. All right. Any questions, discussion? Great. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All righty. That's it, y'all. Have a good one. We're adjourned.